and welcome to Black Bear Atheist. Today we're gonna talk about sex. A video made by Impact Video Ministries answer the question why sex before marriage is wrong. We're gonna check them out and we're gonna see what they have to say.
Is sex before marriage wrong? And if so, why? When it comes to this question, I feel that there are three common camps of thought for Christians.
Obviously, my opinion is no, not really. It's not wrong. Just use protection and don't get yourself diseases, I guess. It's really, you can do whatever you want. Like, your entire life being around your marriage is just weird to me. The idea itself is weird. Moving on.
One camp says, sex before marriage is wrong. And while they in their minds think it's wrong, they aren't really able to explain why it is. And their arguments don't go deeper than, the Bible says it's wrong. Another camp says, sex before marriage is okay. And their reason...
Hold on. Does your reason go deeper than the Bible said it is? I guess we shall find out.
Sound like, well, I'm gonna marry my partner, so sex is fine. Or they try to justify their actions by stating that they need to know if they're sexually compatible with their partner. And
that is a very good reason. If your partner, after you got married already, and you discover that they're shitty in bed, then shit gets awkward.
And the third camp knows that it's wrong, but will regularly fall into the sin for various reasons. So if you find yourself in one of these camps, please look at Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4, which reads,
Okay, so he also falls to the Bible.
Marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure, for God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral. In this passage, the author tells us that marriage should be honored, and that the marriage bed should have purity. And then he goes on to say that God will judge those who have sex with other people's spouses and those who are sexually immoral. So to start us off,
It seems like God cares God cares quite a lot about marriage. What about slavery, God? What about slavery? I guess he doesn't care enough to, ban it.
want to be clear and tell all Christians that God created sex and that he desires it to be within marriage and commands that its bed be kept pure. And I also want to state that all sexual activity that is outside of marriage is wrong. I understand that...
Isn't it weird that God created sex? Why would he do that? There are a few reasons you have sex: for fun, for pleasure, and some would say even for childbearing. But in a Christian perspective, it's really for one reason why you would ever have sex. It's for having children. So why can't God just make another way of us multiplying without sex? Why does it have to be something that will actually give us pleasure? He is criticizing someone else for just saying the Bible said so, and he's doing just the exact same thing. You're not really explaining why sex is bad. You're just saying the Bible said it's bad, so it is bad. And it doesn't make sense that God created sex for pleasure and then ban us from actually doing it unless we're in a marriage. Also, you must marry the right person, because if you are a man and you marry a man, well, you're also doing sexual immorality or whatever you call it, and you're going to hell. That doesn't make any sense.
Our culture is one that is incredibly sexualized, and many celebrate sexual promiscuity. So
Our culture has been very, very sexualized. It's like most cultures are very sexualized. Well, except for when the Christians took over the medieval time, maybe a little bit less maybe a little bit less in a public space. But there's been sexual things. You could see it through the heart, like the paintings and stuff.
I give you my reasons on why sex before marriage is wrong. Please understand my heart for making this video. My goal is not to condemn people if this is a sin that they're in. Rather, my goal is to give Christians legitimate reasons why sex should be saved for marriage, so that when the time comes and they're tempted, they actually know why they're saying no. So, why is sex before marriage wrong? Reason number 1, sin always leads to loss. 2 Samuel chapter 11, verses 2-4. Then it happened one evening that David arose from his bed and walked.
Okay, so we're not actually using common sense. We're not using actual reasoning. We're using the Bible verse, just like anyone else would use the Bible verse to show something is quote unquote wrong or immoral. Same God who was okay with slavery
Walked on the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful to behold. So David sent.
Did they have a binocular? Because how did you see off from the top of the roof? Like what? Why can't David keep his, in his pant from a rooftop? That's more. Like, what kind of eyesight do you have to be like venturing into China and looking into people's home after you have a bunch of wives and concubines? I mean, this guy is messed up. And by the way, this is the same guy God said it is his heart is like his heart or something along those lines.
And inquired about the woman, and someone said, "Is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" Then David sent messengers and took her, and she came to him, and he lay with her, for she was cleansed from her impurity, and she returned to her house.
Oh, must I mention there was no consent here? She was just brought, and then you just fucked her and then let her go. No consent, no nothing. We don't even get our side of the story. We don't even get our side of the story.
In this passage, King David stayed home despite his army going out to battle, and in his idleness, he saw a beautiful woman bathing. And giving into his lusts, King David commanded that she be brought to him, despite her being the wife of one of his mighty men. So David closed off his mind and abused his power to lay with someone else's spouse. This sin was one of David's worst failures, and I want you to see how much David lost due to this sin. He lost his closeness with God. He lost his authority to correct his sons who had similar sins. Due to David's fear of being found out, he murdered Uriah, the husband of Bathsheba, resulting in the loss of one of David's mighty men. David lost the life of his newborn son, peace in his kingdom, and stability in his family. He lost his sensitivity to the Spirit of God and lost.
Oh, also, God was the one that killed the child. And also the fact that it was not stable, that was also God. And also, this guy is insane. I'm talking about David. He's not okay.
Lost his integrity that founded the kingdom of Israel. He lost his love for people and lost sight of his duty to protect and to provide for them. He lost himself.
Does that have anything to do with sex before marriage? David was already married. Like, this is the worst example he could actually have brought up. David was already married. This woman was already married. This has to do with really abuse of power, cheating on people. Like, it has nothing to do with sex before marriage because they're both already married and they both already have sex. What?
His family, and lost God's strength in this chapter of his life. So please understand that the sin of having sex before marriage will cause you to lose something. So if you're
David already fucked bunch of people. and the woman was already married. This is not sex before marriage. This is sex after the marriage. This is sex outside of marriage, but it's not sex before marriage. Like, it's not the same thing. Because they're already married. It's like, again, it's like cheating on someone. That's more of what this actually is.
You're one of the few Christians that still have your virginity. I need you to see that as a precious gift that you are still able to give your future spouse. A gift that I know
No, it's not a gift. It is not a gift.
that your future husband and wife will cherish greatly. You see, many today have thrown away their innocence at the altar of pleasure and idolatry, and they do so not understanding what was sacrificed.
No, they understand very well. Again, I'm not saying to like have sex without protection, do a bunch of other shit. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you can live your life without worrying about, oh, it's immoral to have sex before marriage. And then the reason is because the Bible said so.
And if you lost your virginity already, to continue in this sin will cause you to be diminished in spiritual strength, godly confidence, and your walk with God will be crippled at best. To close this point, I will say that there are special blessings that God reserves for those who are obedient to his commands and calls, and to commit this sin would separate you from them. Reason number 2, sin always.
So reason number 1, bullshit. The example really has nothing to do with sex before marriage. It was sex after marriage. Just sex outside of marriage, but they were already married.
Leads to more sin.
Not really. Not really.
John chapter 8, verse 34. Jesus answered them, "Most assuredly I say to you, whoever commits sin is a slave of sin." In this passage, Jesus tells his audience that those who commit sin are slaves of sin and must obey sin's commands. Now, regarding sex before marriage, one of the biggest reasons why it's wrong is because doing so trains you to be sexually disobedient. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 2 to 3.
What is this motivational bullshit like music playing at the background? Like, why? Just why?
Nevertheless, because of sexual immorality, let each man have his own wife, and let each woman have her own husband. Let the husband render to his wife the affection due her, and likewise also the wife to her husband. In this passage, Paul tells the men in church to have their own wife, and for the women to have their own husband. That way, they can give the affection they desire, thus helping them steer clear from sexual immorality. Paul in the passage goes on to tell them not to deprive each other of each other's bodies, so that Satan doesn't take advantage of their lack of self-control. So understand that God wants husbands and wives to be physically intimate with each other, because sex is meant to be a bond where husbands and wives meet each other's emotional and physical needs. In this context, sex is godly and honors God, but when people
Sex is godly.
have sex outside of marriage, what this does is cause them to sin, and those who sin are slaves of sin. So should the time come,
Does that even make sense? Those who sin are slaves of sin. If you're, oh my God, no, I'm not even gonna venture into that.
if people who engage in premarital sex decide to get married, they will be entering marriage with the history of being sexually disobedient and will
I'm sure they're very, very okay with it. If you have sex before marriage and you're able to find the person that is actually compatible with you, there is really no reason to leave them. You're emotionally compatible, you're physically compatible, and you're in love with each other. So marriage then would be quite okay. It would be actually fine. It would be much more better than blindly choosing someone without really knowing whether you actually are sexually compatible.
will be more likely to continue their sexual disobedience. This disobedience
Sexual disobedience through marriage? I thought it ends once you're married. It just doesn't make sense, man.
can take many forms, but can look like partners committing adultery, partaking in pornography, or refusing to have sex with their spouse out of selfishness. All that to say, be careful.
Also, doesn't this does not make any sense. Pornography, I know like it exists for a very long time, but in the way it exists today, it's not like before. So how is this in the Bible?
Careful when it comes to the sin of sex before marriage, because sexual disobedience before marriage will follow into marriage, and that sin will take a different form.
Oh, also I must mention that he's speaking out of his ass here. Having sex before marriage and then marrying the person he has sex with does not lead to adultery, does not lead to you cheating on your wife or your husband or your partner. It does not lead to pornography. It does not lead to any of this. He's speaking out of his ass.
Because sin always leads to more sin. Reason number 3, sin always leads to death. James chapter 1 verse 15.
I thought someone already died for the sins. Jesus? Isn't that everything you guys preach? Jesus already died for the sin? Isn't that insane that sin always lead to death? But sin is so powerful, God didn't make it. Like, it's just dumb, guys. It is actually dumb. Let's be honest with ourselves. It is very, very dumb.
Then, when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death. In this passage, James tells Christians that evil desires can lead to the birth of sin, and when sin is full grown, will bring forth death. I know I mentioned this before, but please understand that every time we
So it's an evil desire to want to have sex with someone you like or you love or just a random person. That's an evil desire. This is what I mean by Christians label things as evil even when it's actually not. So when the word is actually needed for something to actually describe something that's actually evil, it's not there to be used. Like they already smash it and smack it on literally anything. Like having sex is apparently evil now.
sin, whether it's this sin or another one, something dies, whether you know it or not. I want you to pay close attention to the fruit of the Spirit. Galatians
Oh, by the way, God could have just forgave you without actually killing something. That's a choice God made.
chapter 5, verses 22 to 23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. You see, in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 19, it says to not quench the Spirit. And when we sin, it effectively quenches the Spirit of God that dwells in you. And to sin will cause these fruits to die. This sin will cause love for your partner and love for God to die. Your joy will die. Your peace will die. Your patience, your kindness, your self-control will all die.
Not really. You get joy from having sex. If you're having sex with your partner outside of marriage, you also get love from doing that. You feel quite relaxed after sex. It's like an exercise, but really, really good one. Kindness, I don't even know what the heck that means. Patience, I don't think sex affects that in really any way. Self-control, if you're doing it with your partner, what kind of like like you're not making sense, man. Like self-control somehow this having sex before marriage or outside of marriage is lack of self-control. Is it really?
To close this point, may we all take careful heed to Galatians chapter 6, verses 7 to 8. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. For he who sows to his flesh will of the flesh reap corruption, but he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life. So in other words, don't fool yourself into thinking that your actions won't have consequences. Sin will take its toll. Okay? So if you are ever wondering why sex before marriage is wrong, I hope you remember these 3 reasons why it is. And it's because sin always leads to loss, to more sin, and to death.
Okay, so that's pretty much it. Impact Video Ministry. I really like your animation. It's quite simple and it's pretty nice. Aside from that, this video is full of shit. So you say, well, there's actual explanation to why sex before marriage is wrong. And then you venture into the Bible, no actual research, no actual reality. You venture into words written down about 2,000 years ago, and you get your morality from that. You get your idea of why sex is wrong from that. That is very, very concerning. I'm not saying there's nothing you can take from the Bible. There are things that are okay from the Bible. There are things from 2,000 years ago, and even further than that, that are very, very good teaching. But to say the same thing applies to today is not true. Marriage really, the marriage people marrying each other is actually decreasing by a lot. Maybe not a lot, but it's decreasing. It's decreasing from what it was before. So marriage isn't really as important as you all think it really is. You can have a family without being in a marriage, and you will still be okay. Christians need to calm down. They really need to take a chill pill. Like, they take everything so, well, in theory they take everything in seriously, but in reality they don't. Anyways, I just saw the video and I find it interesting. That's it for today. If you like the video, like and subscribe. Have a great day.